I want to read for you a quote. All right, this is a very important quote from a very smart man who said, "Perhaps law-abiding states should bond together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution," Texas GOP Chairman Allen West said in a statement Friday night. "The Texas GOP will always stand for the Constitution and for the rule of law, even while others don't." Very funny joke, I know. It's your quote. But you said that. And just in the context of what has been happening, not just, and this was in the context of the election and the Supreme Court's ruling.
Yeah, against the state of Texas and the other states coming together about the unconstitutional actions.
Right. Looking at that, looking at the bigger picture, I think it's fair to say we are seeing the Constitution be used, well, I won't be too disrespectful myself, but let's just say they are absolutely disrespecting, violating, and turning the Constitution into Swiss cheese.
Completely.
So you had this statement that many said you were essentially calling for secession, and it actually sounds like you were accusing them of secession. You know
what this is, right?
You got the Declaration of Independence right there,
and
the Constitution.
Yeah, and see, it's falling apart because I take it everywhere I go. And so let me see. Let me go to where's that whole preamble thing? There it is.
Beginning.
So the preamble: "We, the people of the United States, in order to what? Form a more perfect union." Mm-hmm. And in order to form a more perfect union, what's the first thing we do? Establish justice. Mm-hmm. So again, coming back to that piece that I wrote yesterday, constitutionalists versus secessionists, the people that are seceding or the people that are violating this document, the people that are constitutional and law-abiding, like we saw in this past election cycle, you have several states where governors, secretaries of states, and courts did unconstitutional actions. The only people that can change election law is the legislative branch.
Yes.
But yet that's not what we saw happen. So that's not a debatable thing. I mean, YouTube is not going to cancel you out unless YouTube doesn't understand the Constitution. But yet we had people that allowed that to happen.
Absolutely.
And
we had numerous instances, I think 24 states, where outside of the legislature, election rules were changed.
And that's wrong.
Some of these states didn't challenge it. Many of them did.
Yep.
And somehow none of them got standing or ruled on the merits.
And that's horrible, because if you're a state of Texas and you join with 17 other states and you are going to constitutional right petition your government for redress of grievance against another state, there's only one court you can go to. The court of original jurisdiction is the United States Supreme Court. United States Supreme Court cannot say to Texas that we're not going to hear the case.
They did.
But that's your job.
Right.
And so again, we have this abdication of the rule of law and those constitutional duties and responsibilities. And for those people that want to say that, I'm talking about seceding, well, then what was the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact all about? Where these blue states were going to come together and undermine the Electoral College? Okay.
Which is in the Constitution.
Is in the Constitution. So they're the real secessionists. Ian, you had.
Yeah, I feel like they're using martial law as like impetus to bypass rights, and they're acting like COVID is such an emergency that they have to do this. Now, you served as lieutenant colonel, and I imagine you understand the necessity for martial law in certain situations. If we were under attack or if something horrible,
Yeah, 9/11.
Yeah, worst case scenario, power grid goes out, invasion, whatever.
Yeah, like the lights went out in Texas just recently.
Yeah,
people would be, and in the past have been stripped of their constitutional rights. Habeas corpus was suspended.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. So,
but this ain't it. This ain't it, folks. Okay, let's honestly talk about COVID. We're talking about something that has a 99.96% recovery rate. Okay, even the CDC came out last fall and said that out of all the deaths attributed to COVID, only 6% were because of. 94% were basically people that died with COVID. They had other comorbidities. They were obese, high blood pressure, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, all of these things. So
I'll push back a little bit
okay.
and give my standard clarification. I guess the only way I can really break down kind of a middle ground on this assessment is these people would have lived longer had it not been for COVID. So some of these people died of renal failure. And a lot of conservatives have pointed out.
But how much longer? How do we know that? I mean, some of these, you look at the preponderance of the deaths with COVID were above 70 years of age.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so
a very strong majority.
Is that the reason why you go in and suspend the constitutional rights of an entire country?
Well, so here's the point I want to make. Even if it were that COVID was the number one cause outside of any comorbidity, the answer is still no.
Yeah.
We have to respect as a community when we have emergencies. But even when you look at the grand total, I think it's 97.5% recovery when you include those over 70.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's still ridiculously high. Granted, that's looking at a lot of deaths. That 2.5% out of 330 million is
but every year you average almost 600,000 with heart disease.
right, and obesity.
Yes,
and we don't
every year.
We don't lock down the country. We don't mandate calisthenics programs.
No,
we do not shut things down because people are doing things that can be arguably socially contagious, like bad habits.
Think
bad
about how
eating, bad
stupid it
exercise.
is. Okay, so we know obesity is one of the things that, together with COVID causes death, but yet we're going to shut down gyms.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
keep alcohol stores
And
open.
not only
was
that, but
weird.
lack of vitamin D. Dr.
Yes,
Fauci
son,
himself
absolutely.
said we
All
lock
stay
everyone in their
inside.
houses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stay inside. And we know that COVID was spreading more inside than outside.
Yep.
We lock everyone in their homes with no sun, with no exercise, and a higher chance of rate of spreading COVID. What did people think was going to happen? So it was.
But see, the thing, and again, no emergency is grounds to suspend the rule of law. So what this was a grand experiment in control.
Well, do you think the Civil War was grounds for suspending the Constitution? Abraham Lincoln did it.
I know, but I would not have.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot suspend, people's habeas corpus. But, the interesting thing is that you had a situation where, we were fighting against each other within, the same spaces. I mean, here we have, West Virginia and being on one side, Virginia is on another side, and Pennsylvania is on another side. But still, you don't suspend constitutional rights no matter what. And that goes back to what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did with the Japanese Americans with the internment camps. I understand the criticality of the situation, but you do not suspend people's constitutional rights.
Agreed.
But they have put their toes in the water, and they found that the water was very receiving.
Yeah.
And so what is the next step?
Well, have you heard of the Great Reset, the World
course.
Economic Forum?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the U.S. has been co-opted by the Federal Reserve and global banking establishments, and they're using our military and our economy.
And where do you find the premise of central banking?
Switzerland and the Bank of International Settlements.
Karl Marx Communist Manifesto. It's one of the
Is that
bullets.
really in there?
It is.
Wow.
Centralized control of banks, just like centralized control of education, just like progressive tax system. We have a tax system in the United States of America that's based upon the principles of Karl Marx, a progressive tax system. And so, again, there's so much of this out there that if a dumb old boy from Georgia who used to jump out of airplanes for a living, if I can figure this out, you really smart people can figure this out.
Well,
you
so
a paratrooper?
let's.
Yeah, I couldn't fly airplanes. I jumped out.
Oh, wow.
So we'll have a conversation on this because there are a lot of things that are more liberal or left-wing policies that I agree with. But my challenge, one of the things that always leaves me more of a moderate in the middle, is implementation. So when I look at the progressive tax, I think about people like George Soros. I think about the Koch brothers. I think about, did I say Bezos? I said Soros. Bezos.
Yeah.
Extremely powerful individuals who have so much wealth, they've actually shut out the working class from the election process. So I'll give you some examples. Mike Bloomberg dumping $600 million into the election.
Oh, we saw that with Mark Zuckerberg.
$300 million.
Yeah, into Texas, directly to a county clerk's office. So no, we should not allow that to happen.
So a few years ago, I was very much, I should say for a large portion of my life, I was very much in favor of a progressive tax system where we have a higher percentage for people who make more because of, I guess, arguably called the law of power, right? Power attracts power. Mm-hmm. The more money you make, the easier it is for you to make more money. And this money allows you to invest, reduce risk, live comfortably. If you make $10 million, it's very, very easy for you to make more because you have so much access and things like that. So the argument.
See, I would disagree with you.
Disagree?
Yes. How is it that a kid that doesn't even have a college education can grow up and be a multimillionaire in the United States of America?
They can.
Yeah. And so it's about the equality of opportunity.
What
you're talking about is the corruption of power. And,
yes.
And so what it takes, much the same as Sir Edmund Burke said, all is necessary to the triumph over evil is for good men to do nothing. So if we continue to have a political elite system, which I think even Ayn Rand kind of wrote about, if we have a political elite system that teams up with the corporate cronies and the elites of corporations, like what we see with big tech right now, then you see a usurpation.
So my view of the progressive tax was, in a simplistic kind of way, you can create a system that makes it harder for people with extreme wealth to utilize that wealth as an advantage over the working class in the arena of politics. That's my core reason.
And I agree with you. That, like I said, it's the corruption of power.
Right. Here's the problem. Giving the money to the government doesn't solve the problem, because now you have another monopoly that has all of that power. And so you've got permanent bureaucrats that would take that money from the ultra wealthy and then just maintain their control. So, ultimately, while I still kind of view that as a better alternative, simply because there's many bureaucrats versus the one billionaire who can flood the zone with money and shut out the working class, I ultimately still see it as a problem that needs to be solved beyond.
We don't allow them to flood the zone.
Exactly. So that's the other point I would make, is maybe the solution is more simply some kind of restriction somehow. I honestly don't know how you do it.
Well, this is where I think it starts. Is one of the things that Mark Levin wrote about in his book Liberty Amendments is term limits on members of Congress, House and Senate, because the longer people are up here in Washington D.C., the richer they get. I mean, ask yourself, how could a young lady from Brooklyn, New York, there was a bartender, have a posh penthouse apartment in Washington, D.C.? And you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, isn't it like $3,000 a month or more?
It's a lot. Okay? It's a lot. And so, when I was in Congress 10 years ago, I had a, fully furnished little basement, I call it the Bat Cave. Didn't even have a window.
There are members of Congress sleeping in their offices.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
So how does it, and I disagree with that. So how is it that, this person that was a former bartender now has a posh penthouse apartment over there by Washington Nationals Park? I'm telling you, it's this. And so is that marrying of the corporate cronyism to the political elitism? That's what we all should come together.
How do we?
I agree. I hear it from the progressives, I hear it from the Young Turks, and I completely agree with them. The problem is, like the Citizens United ruling, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Mm-hmm. You've got these super PACs, these political action committees. How do you tell someone they can't spend their money to buy a commercial? I mean, it's a free speech issue.
I don't mind people buying the money for a commercial. I don't want them buying a politician.
Well, how do they do that?
You make sure that they cannot buy a politician. You pass the laws like what we're doing in Texas right now in our legislative session that says, Mark Zuckerberg, you don't get to come back in here and dump $100,000 into Harris County so that they can go out and, number one, try to do universal mail-in ballots, which is against Texas election law, and they expand curbside voting, which is completely against Texas election law. So that's what you do. Our states have power. That's why you have a 10th Amendment. It says all of the powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. So our states need to assert their powers and make sure that, like I said, coming back to H.R. 1 and some of these other things being passed, constitutional nullification was pretty much so passed in North Dakota.
Well, let's talk about H.R. 1.
Yeah.
Right. So it passed the House.
Passed the House.
It's not yet gone to the Senate, right?
Well, it's over to the Senate. But the thing is, right now, this is the concern. Right now, the Senate still, you have to have 60 votes to end the cloture, which means that you can go into the final vote. If they change that and get rid of the filibuster, then you got problems.
Yeah.
Now, what keeps the Democrats right now from going straight to getting rid of the filibuster? Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, West Virginia and Arizona, have said they will not support getting rid of the filibuster. So we'll see what happens.
Well, they can just all of a sudden snap their fingers and be like, yeah, no more filibusters
and now
allowed.
Now then it would be 51 votes or 50 votes in a tiebreaker.
Dude, they have way too much power.
And the tiebreaker is Kamala Harris. And see, that's why the Senate was set up to be the upper body of our legislative branch, and it will require 60 votes because what the founding fathers wanted to make sure you got the representation of the people. That's majority. But over here in the Senate, that's the clearinghouse. So everything can't just get rammed right through. You really have to have a deliberative body.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.